and good afternoon to everybody. I've worked with elderflowers in the lab and kitchen for many years now, so it now gives me great pleasure to take you on my journey learning how to grow them. Sambucus nigra, the European elder, one of our wild native trees. Its products are great British summertime classics. We've eaten elderberries and elderflowers for centuries, first as medicines and then translating them into foodstuffs as we realised how tasty they were. Elderflower products can be found on all supermarket shelves and behind any respectable bar. And elderflower products are now exported around the world. Yet elderflower is still a wild picked crop. So in the future, as our love for this complex summery flavour gains traction, where are all the flowers going to come from? So that led me to ask the question, can we cultivate our own homegrown crop of elderflowers in the UK? And I set about asking those who've already experimented in this area. I found no lack of enthusiasm, but a number of barriers in their way. And most commonly, that was a simple lack of knowledge about how to grow them. Many people had experienced teething problems in getting this wild native plant to perform when in a planted out scenario. I also noticed a distance between growers and processors, both geographically, but in the way that they understand each other's operations. And so my Nuffield Farming project was born. I headed to the traditional elder growing areas in Europe of Austria and Germany, and these are pictured on the left and the centre. And I also went to orchards in Eastern Europe, for example, the one pictured on the right in Poland. In Austria and Germany, they're growing for berry, whereas in Eastern Europe, it's more often than not for flower and for things like herbal teas. All of these orchards were well-clipped conventional systems that any fruit grower would understand well. And in fact, most of the people growing elders are also growing other fruit crops, for example, apples and cherries. And they told me that elder is one of the easiest and less intensive of all of these to grow. As I travelled to other parts of Europe, I realised that elder was being grown more often in mixed systems. For example, here in northern Portugal, you can find thousands of elders in the most famous of wine growing areas, in amongst the vines, bordering apple orchards and interplanted with sweet chestnut. This is an efficient use of space, but also they aren't going to see the crop from the sweet chestnuts for at least 10 years, whereas the elder will be full yielding in 3 to 4 years. And then I went to the US and I saw this. This is a typical elder orchard in the US, and most states now grow elder. And they're growing their own native American elder, Sambucus canadensis. Whilst this is closely related to its European cousin, there are some differences behaviourally and chemically, but that doesn't stop us learning a lot from their story. Pictured here is Frank Gordon's elder field in Missouri. He's a grape grower and he translates his know-how and skill from the vineyard into the elder field. His orchard's very well clipped and clean, but there's really no problem with that, because when you're growing for a berry crop, you want to be sure that you're going to protect those berries from pest and disease. But what about if you haven't got the fancy vineyard equipment and know-how and you're just trying to grow a flower crop? Well, as I travelled to more northerly states of the US, I found a number of systems that really appealed to me in their simplicity. Pictured here on the left is Steve and Chris Van Heitzmar of Mud Lake Farm in Michigan. They are blessed with elder on their land, and that means they are able to wild manage. So all they do is mow and prune, and they're able to take a crop of flowers in the spring and berries in the summer from the same plot. And this supports a soda business. But what happens if you haven't got enough elder on your land? Well, I found the answer in Vermont, and with John Hayden, whose elders are pictured here on the right. John first improved his land by planting a cover crop, and then he planted his elders between 2 strips of landscape fabric. In the gap between, he filled it with ramial wood chip. The carbon from the wood chip feeds the soil microbiology, which in turn feeds the elders, and he had very impressive flower yields. So whilst I was going around sniffing elderflowers, elders are being grown in America for the berries, and that's due to a strong consumer interest in elderberry as a health ingredient. But more interestingly, that consumer interest has been created by farmers and not marketeers. Pictured here is Kyla and Lene. They manage elder farms in the Ozarks for the Bula family. This is a perfect example of a farm moving with the times. Once a combinable crops and dairy operation, they've now transformed it into a medical plant farm. They grow elderberries, elderflowers and hemp, which they manufacture into dietary supplements on site. And they're also responsible for sales and marketing direct to consumer, which they do online and also through farmers markets. It all seems like an awful lot of hard work, but having this direct engagement with the consumer is so powerful. But the most common and original way that you'll find people growing elderberries in the US is as part of a grower collective or co-op. This is exemplified by the company River Hills Harvest, owned by Terry Durham, pictured here on the right. I was privileged to spend the afternoon with Terry, as he is a pioneer grower of elderberry in the US. Terry aggregates the berries from many small farms and brings them together in a central processing hub. He's created all the processes and equipment that he needs to deal with them. For example, look at the picture here with the purple legs. This is called Ted. It's Terry's elderberry distemmer, which he designed himself. Terry has also created a range of consumer products, and his business mantra is dawned on the front label: farmer grown, farmer owned. A 50ml shot of Terry's pure elderberry juice goes for $3 a piece down at the local natural products cafe, and that's about £2.30. Terry shared with me the amount of time that he spends working with his growers. He runs workshops for new potential growers, but also for existing ones to update them with the latest coming out of universities. And here is Chris Patton, another key figure in growing up the US elder industry. Chris is the founder and president of the Midwest Elderberry Cooperative. This is a formal cooperative offering a sales and marketing platform for elderberry ingredients, and it also offers processing hubs to its growers. Like Terry, Chris places a lot of time and importance on educating, supporting and motivating his growers. This was something which I got to experience as we travelled hundreds of miles together across Wisconsin and Minnesota visiting growers. Both Chris and Terry talked to me passionately about how you must ensure that there's value in the chain for everyone in order that it be long-lasting. Speaking of education, there's no time for me to review all of the research programs and researchers that I visited during my travels. However, my overall impression was there is a lot of research going on, but most of it's happening in the US, and most of it's to do with their American elder. The research in the US is very applied. It's business and grower-led. And there's no wonder, because key figures such as Professor Andrew Thomas from the University of Missouri had been having collaborations with pioneer growers such as Terry for ages. For example, they launched the Elderberry Improvement Programme in 1997. Having this connection between academics and growers means that research findings get disseminated onto the farm very quickly, and equally farmers can feed straight back into the research plan. Having groups of growers and academics who know each other is a great way to attract research funding. But it's not all about formal collaborations and workshops, but rather what spins off from those. And I was fortunate enough to be able to experience this when Cherie and Rich Hagenhoff of Sac Valley River Elderberry Farm in Missouri invited me to spend an afternoon with their local grower group. They invited me to tour each other's elderberry farms, and we talked about varieties and we looked at each other's primary processing equipment. And then we all ended up at Cherie and Rich's farm tasting each other's products. I experienced here a sense of openness and community, and I realised that it's this culture that helps them get through the tough times of a bad season, but also where an industry's development really accelerates. And so did I actually learn how to grow elders? Well, yes, I did, but the pieces of the puzzle actually came together nowhere near an elderberry farm, but rather in a food forest in Michigan, and thanks to the wisdom of this gentleman pictured here, Ken Asmus of Oikos Tree Crops. Ken runs a nursery and repository for populations of wild native plants. He places great care in making sure that the right plant is grown in the right location, and that each plant has its each needs catered for. And guess what? Those elders that we're buying from nurseries back at home are genetically barely removed from those that you find in the wild. And so when you take an elder whip and you plant it out into a field, you become responsible for habitat creation. You are responsible for ensuring that the soil fertility and condition has been improved before you plant. You are responsible for ensuring that enough organic matter is put on the ground so that there's carbon substrate to encourage the fungal mycorrhizal networks that will help that shallow-rooted elder's roots establish and absorb nutrient. You are responsible for ensuring that the soil is kept moist and well drained, yet never waterlogged. In the hedgerow, nature is doing all of this for you. So really all that you need to know in order to grow elder well is a fundamental understanding of its botany. So knowing something about its botany, you will know that elder is fast to grow, yet fast to senesce. And so naturally, you'll put pruning into your annual management plan because you don't want it to die out. So once you've created the habitat, you must maintain the habitat. And that means adding regular mulches, mimicking what happens at the forest edge. And so in summary, elder is another layer of the farm of your land. You can find it growing in diverse systems and contexts, and it's really ideal in a mixed planting scenario. It's easy to grow when you understand its botany. And in the words of Professor Andrew Thomas, it's very responsive to management. And what's more, I found out that elder positively thrives in response to regenerative practices. And that those are also really helpful in ensuring that we can keep inputs low in the longer term and that we build resilience into the system. And how timely is all that? Just as the wider community is starting to really understand the importance of regenerative agriculture and when policies shift towards tree crops and perennial systems. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to rethink this weed as a sustainable British homegrown crop plant, but we have a lot of work to do together. Yes, let's work on optimising yield and variety for the UK, but please let's not breed or select out the flavour and nutrition in the process. And I'm keen that we will build resilience factors into our growing systems so that we don't create another monoculture crop that isn't resilient to changing climate or emerging pests. I think we can have our own UK supply chain, but only if we're prepared to build value into the chain for all so that it can be sustainable. We must not be afraid to engage in knowledge exchange, as that accelerates development. And I place emphasis on the word exchange here, being a two-way process. You're going to give a lot, but you're going to get a lot back. So finally, we need whole chain commitment and investment in the big research questions surrounding elder growing in the UK. Because I know that the success of other elder industries around the world has come from the concerted efforts of motivated individuals working together within the entire chain. And so that leaves me only to say thank you to everybody that I met along the way, that hosted me, that inspired me. My special thanks go to Martin and Anne Thatcher of Thatcher Cider for having sponsored this scholarship, because without that, none of this would have been possible. To the 2019 Scholar Group for your friendship and being there to call on, and to the team at Nuffield Farming Scholarships Trust for running around behind the scenes to make the programme fantastic. And last but not least, to my partner Adrian for his patience and tolerance while I spent many an hour working on this project.